You're listening to the Childfree Wealth Podcast. We're your hosts, Bri and Dr. J, certified financial planner. Here we discuss life and finances as it relates to being child-free. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Please consult your advisor before implementing any ideas heard on this podcast.
All right, for all you Childfree Wealth listeners, today we have Tiffany J. Marie joining us. And if you've been on Instagram and looking at child-free stuff, chances are you've seen her there. How long have you been doing the Instagram thing?
Just a few years now, actually. I think I started kind of taking it seriously during the pandemic because I didn't really have much else to do. And here we are.
And you got like 5 billion followers or something like that? 100?
I think it's up to 126.
But who's counting?
Yeah. I try not to think about it because when I think about the fact of like visualizing 100,000 people in real life, it like freaks me out too much. So I just try and pretend that number doesn't actually exist there.
And you're better at it than I am. I am not good at social media. That's why Bri does most of our stuff. But I just can't take the comments. Now, I'm in the deep South in Mississippi, and the amount of people praying for my soul because, my child-free, childless soul, and I'm like, oh. So how do you handle that?
A lot of the time, and I think maybe that's one thing that kind of differentiates me from some other people is like 99% of the time, I know it's not really about me. Like any of the comments, it has nothing to do with me. It's other people projecting their own fears or own insecurities. Like if someone were to say, you're going to end up alone, maybe, but I love being alone. Like that is my dream life, being alone. So like if they're afraid of ending up alone, that's fine. And you have kids and you build a family and you make sure you never have any time alone. But it's not about me. I don't have that fear. It doesn't really affect me that much. And the other 1% of the time, sometimes I'll just delete content. Like if things are getting too hostile, I'll just be like, I'm not willing to put up with this, and I'll delete it and the problem disappears.
Okay, so I just saw this on your Instagram. You just deleted the comments about Barbie.
Yeah.
I get the child-free icon in the movie. I haven't even seen the movie. I don't know. But I had saw your original post, and then what? People are getting all hot and bothered about Barbie?
Yeah, like it's one thing to disagree with what my opinion is and whatever. And there was a lot of really great discussion going on. So it's actually kind of sad that I felt like I had to delete it. But people kind of stopped dealing with the opinion and the issue and the perception and started sort of like personally coming after me and like, you're wrong and your opinion is wrong. And like, I'm in a place today where I'm like, I just don't want to deal with it. So I'll just delete the post and I'll just move on with my day and not have to think about it anymore. So it's a shame, but when people can't have sort of a respectful discussion and respectfully disagree, it's not worth my time.
That's fair. I'm in the financial world. I can't delete the post. Like literally, we have to like keep copies of it for years. And I said to my compliance person, I'm like, what do I do when people are just throwing stones and just being jerks? And he's like, yeah, those you can hide or delete or whatever, but that's more like, because it has nothing to do with the post. It's just, whatever. I have somebody over there. Well, we have to have kids, so you have taxpayers and warriors. And I'm like, what the heck does this have to do with? But no, I'm with you. For those following us, we're actually recording this just before International Childfree Day. And Tiffany was one of the volunteers or voluntold, depending on how you look at it, to be on our billboard in Times Square. So if you haven't seen that, you can check out our Instagram. It's on there. When Tiffany and I were talking a little before we started recording, and one of the interesting things we found was that people didn't want to be publicly like in the middle of Times Square on a billboard saying, "Hi, I'm child free," but you're fine with it, right? Hopefully.
Yeah, public on the internet. I don't think you can really get any more public than that.
I think by the time this airs, we'll know what happened. But one of the things we're debating is how much people are going to get cranky about the billboard. I mean, just even saying, hey, we're enjoying our child-free life seems to upset people. But, hey, we have to do it. Tiffany, August 1st, International Childfree Day, for those who don't follow that. But what does International Childfree Day mean to you? It could mean nothing, could mean something. I don't know. But what's it mean to you?
I think it's nice to have a day to just sort of appreciate this life, because I think when people say like child free, everyone kind of thinks of the people who don't like kids or don't want to be around kids. But I came from infertility and I still categorize myself as child free, and a lot of other people do. And I think it's nice to have a day to celebrate that. Like there's Mother's Day and Father's Day and Grandparents' Day and Valentine's Day for the married people and whatever. Like why shouldn't we have a day to celebrate and appreciate not having kids and connect with other people who don't have kids? Like I can understand people not wanting to like put their face on a billboard. That's a pretty vulnerable thing to do. I'm already sort of a public figure, so to speak, in the line of fire, so it doesn't mean much to me. But I don't see why that has to be like a shameful thing to carry.
I'm with you. I mean, I'm literally, it's everything in my business. I mean, like, but I have people, just because I say, hey, I help people that are child free or whatever, the judgment immediately comes. I get people, even I like try to buy software for them in the financial world, and they're like, oh, you hate kids. I'm like, no, I don't hate kids. I just happen to serve people who are child free. Like, it's amazing to me. But I think for me, my goal for International Childfree Day, and maybe you have enough platforms so you can make this happen, is that one day we can walk into the drugstore and find a Hallmark card that says Happy Child Free Day. Like,
Oh,
that's when
wouldn't
we
that
would
be
know we'd
nice?
be. Like, that's when we know
Yeah.
we'd be there. You'd think 25% of the U.S. is the number I use, are child free or permanently childless. You'd think they want to have a card for 25% of the U.S.
Yeah. I was actually just talking to somebody and she was saying that, she's also a child-free content creator and companies are really hesitant to work with child-free content creators, but have no problem sponsoring like babies. So like it's weird that like I get the parent market is huge, but you would think most people without kids have slightly more disposable income. If you're going to try and go after a market that is going to bring you business, it's going to be people without kids. We are like living a life of leisure over here. Like it's funny to me that they wouldn't, businesses from a strictly business sense wouldn't want to tap into that, especially as birth rates have dropped. Like this seems to be an emerging market that I don't know, I think companies are missing out on.
I think part of it is the baggage that comes with it. So, right now in the U.S., as far as I know, I'm the only life and financial planning firm that exists for child-free folks. And the fact that there's one firm serving 25% of the U.S. is just crazy. Like, I mean, there should be hundreds, never mind one. But one of my colleagues, he actually tried serving the child-free market. He happened to be a parent himself. And like literally, he went to church and people were like, oh, you hate kids, you're doing this, that, and the other. And they started judging him just for serving the population. So it may be the baggage that comes with it. But, Laura Carroll did a whole piece on this around Christmas time and said, hey, you are missing out if you're not marketing to, in her case, she was talking about women, child-free women. She's like, the market is so huge and you're avoiding it. And I just don't know. I mean, part of it is there's not a great way to reach all of the market. I mean, you got 126,000 people or whatever it is. Frankly, that's only a small percentage of the child-free folks. And
Yep.
you're probably the largest content creator. Is there anyone bigger?
I think there's a few more that are kind of within the same range.
Right. But statistically, you are,
Oh, tiny.
I don't know, 1% of the
Yeah.
population of child-free folks. I don't know. I mean, what's your answer? You want people to come to you and say, hey, Tiffany, we'll do sponsored posts with you and you can sell Barbie dolls, or I don't know what we're selling today, but
I think it'd just be nice if there was less, like maybe not less, but more sort of, I guess, general marketing even. Because like even going to the grocery store, it's very like parent oriented. And like I think one of the slogans recently was shop like a mother. And I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, I'm trying to save money on groceries. Have you seen the price of fruit lately? Like, just because someone is a parent doesn't mean they necessarily shop differently. And I would even just love brands to not shy away from that. Like, if you see a content creator out there who's going to help your brand and they're kind of gearing their stuff towards people without kids, why is that harmful to you? I challenged a post, it was like a sock company, and it was specifically targeting parents, and it was kind of borderline insulting to people without kids because, like, it's socks. Everybody wears socks. So they're like, if you don't have kids, keep scrolling. This isn't for you. And I'm like, really? This is socks. Are you saying that, like, people without kids don't deserve to buy socks. It's just so weird. And surprisingly, the company actually apologized and said they were going to pull the video and whatever. But the fact that that even had to be called out was just like ridiculous. So they're fine alienating childless and child-free people, and they don't see a problem with that, but they aren't fine working with us. It's so strange to me.
Well, and you'd think from a business standpoint, I mean, it just makes sense. I can't, say 25% of the market I'm going to ignore. And the stat I use comes out of a study in Michigan. They found 25% or so are child free. On that same study, they found about 7 and some odd percent were LGBTQ plus. So we're triple the size of the market, which, by the way, I'm all for Pride. There were great advertisements of Pride. All the companies were advertising for Pride. I guess they can't advertise for Child Free Day, I guess, or
or even acknowledge us.
Yeah, I saw something online. Somebody was really happy because a commercial for pregnancy tests actually showed people happy for a negative. And she's like, this is a huge thing that people are, it's okay to be happy. And I'm like, good point. Like, makes sense.
As a woman, even when I did want kids, I can promise you that most of the pregnancy tests that are sold, people are happy to have a negative. All this advertising for like, oh, it's so exciting. Like, I think the stat is approximately 50% of pregnancies are quote unquote accidental. I really doubt that most of these sales are women who are actively trying to get pregnant. And it's women who are like, oh no, my period's late. Maybe some of it is met with joy, but I'm going to say quite a bit of it's probably also met with relief.
That's fair. Let's go down this path. So if you were giving advice to companies and saying, okay, here's how you should reach out to the child-free community, what would your advice be?
That's a tough one. I'm not really a marketer. So it's a hard call,
but this is the whole point. You're a content creator in this area. And whether we want to consider, whatever your role is, however you want to look at it, you are someone that's talking to this market. Frankly, you are a marketer. You might not call it that, but you are. How do we make inroads for companies to go, okay, well, then how do I do it?
I think even just showing like families, people without kids and enjoying that and acknowledging us, like for every 10 parent geared ad, why not have one non-parent geared ad? We shouldn't be, I guess I should say, we shouldn't be like relegated to the sort of more controversial items either. I would love to see laundry detergent marketed to people without kids, or like cleaning supplies, or, I don't have a family that makes quite as bit of a mess, but when messes do happen, or like I don't have kids, but when my nieces and nephews come over, I want to make sure things are disinfected. I don't know, something like, I just don't know why it's so hard to say like at least one ad every so often specifically targeted to us. Everybody else sort of has ads specifically targeted to them, and then we're kind of just the leftovers, I guess.
Well, that's fair. I mean, I don't know. I've been studying marketing to child-free folks because in my business, that's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've had to write some books and different things because in the financial literature, it all assumes you have kids. When I was becoming a certified financial planner, never once was there mention. It doesn't exist. It's all pre-kids, post-kids. All the financial advice you get online, I mean, 99%, I can't say 100%, but close enough, assume you're going to have kids. Yeah. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. I had to go out and actually figure this out, and I'm still figuring it out. But I started working on, okay, well, then how do I reach child-free folks to say, yeah, by the way, and there's not great tools. There's some small communities online. When I say small, I mean, I don't mean to downplay, but 100,000 people is small out of the population.
Oh, it's minuscule.
And I'm going, okay, cool. So how do we actually talk to them? So I started doing a lot of press and saying, hey, child-free people have a different life. And I spend time talking to child-free people about their finances and talking to financial people about child-free people and saying, like, don't say stupid stuff. Don't mistreat them. Like, let's start with the basics. And I'm amazed by how many people go, oh, I guess I am child-free. I didn't know that was the term. They didn't even know what to Google or, Wall Street Journal did an article on financial planning without kids. And I had somebody call up. He goes, that's me. And I'm like, yes, it is. I didn't know there was a concept of old elder gentleman, but I'm like, the term itself, people don't even know. So they were saying, okay, let's market to people, because it's really hard to say. I call my firm Childfree Wealth. It's really hard to say, people who don't have kids and don't planning on having kids wealth. Like it just
Yeah.
doesn't market the same way. But I struggle. So you've got 100 and some odd thousand followers. If you were in the mommy blog world, you'd have people trying to sponsor your ads and getting you to like do sponsored posts. Do you do that now?
I don't, but I also like haven't actively sought it out. One thing I was really kind of adamant about going into this is I didn't want to become just like someone who just advertised a bunch of stuff all the time. Like I'd be open to working with brands who I actually already use or actually believe in. I wouldn't just kind of market for the sake of marketing. That's actually one of the things that drives me crazy about a lot of the mommy blogs and stuff is like after a while you can see like, oh, they've hit it big and now they're just a social media advertising company. It's less about their kids and it's more about here's the 15 codes that you can use and whatever. So I haven't really been intentional about that, but I'd be open to it. I would love to work with a brand that's not afraid to kind of come into this space. Kits Eyewear ended up reaching out to me and they gave me a promo code and I was actually pretty surprised because brands don't do that. But everybody was asking where I got my glasses, so they decided to kind of take that bold step and like I love them for it. I'm even a bigger fan of their stuff now that they weren't afraid to be like, "Oh, these are kind of controversial videos, but this is a marketing opportunity for us."
Yeah, and I think my question where I was going with that is I have a feeling if you were in a different area and you had 100,000 plus followers and some good engagement, you'd already have brands reaching out to you.
Oh, probably.
I'm just kind of, thinking it through and going, Tide or whatever would be reaching out to you because you're talking about cleaning supplies. Like,
Yeah, I don't doubt that. I think they'd probably be actively seeking out partnership as opposed to me having to like justify why I'd be a good partner.
I just wonder how we get past that. I don't know. Are we just too early in the market in talking about child-free stuff, or?
I think so. Like, I think the fact that the birth rate has dropped is probably going to lend itself to more acceptance, but sort of the boomer generation, for lack of a better way to put it, still kind of dominates everything. There's still the people that are saying, you have to have kids. What do you mean you're not having kids? And especially in the States with like the kind of uprising of the ultra right wing and like so much religion being interwoven in that, like they also like to use that to justify a lot of stuff. So like it is a weird place to be. I think we are a little bit early, I guess, in making this sort of normalized, but hopefully it won't take much longer. It's not like this is a new thing, really. Maybe this is the first time it's been popularized, but people have been opting out of having kids for decades. Like it's really not like it's suddenly happening.
Well, I mean, this is actually the 50th anniversary of International Childfree Day, which originally was Non-Parents Day. I don't know. Is it like the term? Because give you context. So I'm in Mississippi where all this post-Roe world cases came from, and it's a hard place to be child-free. Let's just put it that
I
way.
bet.
Like, so I recently sold my house. I had to take down all my signs because I was worried people would either not buy the house or vandalize it in the, just to have it. I'm like, no, I'm not talking about it. Like, and my wife works for a university and like we have to keep our lives separate so that my work in the child free community doesn't negatively impact her.
That's crazy.
Oh yeah. Like you don't have a clue how crazy it is. We're deep red. But is it the term? Is it we're not accepted? Is it the life we're living? I mean, I had somebody the other day. I asked questions about this, and they said we were talking about my company. They said you have two terms that are like taboo together: child free and wealth. Both of those are bad terms right now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why? What do you think? I mean, is it the term? Is it the lifestyle? Is it just I don't know.
I think people do maybe take the term child free to heart a little bit more. Like, I think there's really no winning. I kind of was thinking about this morning because I saw a clip of Ellen Pompeo and she said, women are either the victim or the villain. And it's so true within the childless and child free community because people love when you're childless. They love putting you in that box. And I don't personally know as a man how different it is, but like people love when they can be sad for me as a woman. It's you poor, barren, sad woman. But if you say child free, it's, oh, suddenly you're a child hater. And what do you mean you want to be free of children? As if children are a burden. And like children are a burden. They're a big responsibility. There should be weight attached to parenting. Like I don't think there's a good sort of neutral term that has been invented. I think child free to me obviously is not offensive at all, but I think maybe some parents or people who want to be parents could maybe see that as offensive, like a direct insult to their choice. I really have no idea. I think people overthink it a little bit.
Well, and I think it truly matters by location and where you are and what culture and the state and in the U.S. example or religion. All the reactions get just amped up. You know, I have people explain what I'm going through in Mississippi, and they're like, they'll be in California, and they're like, it's not like that. And I'm like, yes, it is here.
Yeah.
You know, like, but I live in San Fran. It's not. Oh, okay. How much difference do you see in the U.S. versus Canada?
I think if you would have asked me a few years ago, it would have been pretty dramatically different. But post Trump, a lot of that has really bled over the border. And it's definitely more conservative people have become more vocal. Generally, in our area, I think we're really lucky. I get the sort of standard people always asking me if I have kids and giving me kind of weird looks. Like, I was at the doctor's office the other day and he's like, oh, so like, do you have any kids? And I'm like, no kids. And he's like, oh, well, I see you're married. How long have you been married for? And I'm like, oh, coming up on 10 years. And he's like, and no kids yet, eh? Like, nope, no kids. I think anywhere you go, you're going to get that. It's still, I don't know why it's a big deal, but people still make it into a big deal. But there's definitely, I think, a lot more hostility in sort of the Bible Belt and the really red states. Canada, I guess, is maybe a bit more liberal. Like we do still have a lot of rights, but there's definitely a lot of that bleeding up into Canada.
Yeah, I don't know. The U.S. has got some weird stuff going on. Let's just be real on that. It's just,
Yeah.
just messed up. And down here in the South, it is just screwy. One of the debates my wife and I are having is, do you stay and fight from the inside, or do you go somewhere that reflects your values? And it's
That's
one of those.
A tough question because there's a lot of people who are now moving to a state that sort of represents them. And like that in and of itself is going to probably cause a lot of issues if that gets too out of hand. Like,
Yep. My firm's heavily regulated. I'm a registered investment advisor. I had to actually move it from being under the state of Mississippi to being under the SEC to protect the privacy of my clients. Our governor came out publicly and said, hey, I'm not tapping your phones and reading your mail, but. I'm like, but what? Like, you know.
there shouldn't be a but after that sentence.
And as a regulated industry, they could come in and read all my files and, you know, find something about reproductive health and cause issues for both me and my clients. And I had to I spent tens of thousands of dollars to move my firm just to protect the privacy of my clients. And I'm like, I should not have to worry about that. Like, I'm just talking about their life and finances. Who cares? But in the U.S., if somebody moves for the reproductive rights, like in Texas, that could, in theory, be against the law. And it's like, it's getting ridiculous. There are days where I get up in the morning and I have the fight in me. And then there's other days I'm like, I'm going to let Tiffany fight. That's one thing. And I just don't know. I've been joking about it, but I think it's true that we as a child-free community need kind of like a leader to be out there constantly, you know, banging the drums and saying, yep, we're here. We're proud of our life. We're just out there. But I think we might be talking to the wrong audience. We need to be talking to the whole world, not child-free communities.
Yep.
Child-free communities were already accepted. We need to be out there going, yep, we're here and it's fine and we're good. You know, I was at a conference, financial conference. You'll get a kick out of this. And these are boring as heck conferences. I mean, like.
Oh, they're dull. My husband's a financial advisor and I went to one and snooze fest.
Yeah, boring. This guy gets up there and speaks and he goes, well, working with people without kids is the worst. And I'm like, you can't say that. Could you imagine if he had changed the words to working with blank group? Just fill in the blank is the worst.
Literally anything else.
I complained to the conference. I'm like, hey, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, yeah, well, he should have worded it better. Like,
shouldn't have said it at all.
Are you going to be our cheerleader and lead the group and say we're all here, or we got to find somebody else to do that one?
Oh gosh, I don't know. More and more, I end up in these positions where I'm like, I hate public speaking. Being out in front of people is like my worst nightmare. And like, here I am being out in front of people, living my worst nightmare. It's hard. I don't know. I'm the same way where there's days where I have so much fight in me and I'm like, fight for the cause. We can make change. And then there's other days where I'm like, this is just exhausting. These people are awful. Everybody is unduly cruel. Like, what's the point? And I just want to throw my phone into a lake.
Okay, you got to answer this though. When you started your Instagram presence, what was the point?
Honestly, it was like selfish of me because I like once we decided, okay, we're not going to pursue a life with kids, we're going to embrace this life without kids. We sat down, had a lot of really intentional discussions like, okay, we don't have kids. So what are we going to do to make sure our life isn't totally me focused? Generosity was a big thing. We were really intentional about our choice. And when I went to search for other people who decided to not have kids, it was like two dramatically different camps. It was the childless camp and the infertility. And the majority of that camp was still sort of grieving. They were in their sadness. It was hard. They were still getting sad over pregnancy announcements. And I'm like, I'm past that. I don't want to sit in the grief forever. And then it was like, and maybe this is my mistake, but I ended up looking on Facebook and stuff. And then it was like child-free stuff. And it was just so hateful. There was like literally posts about violence against children. And I was like, I want nothing to do with that. Like, I don't hate kids. I just want to bond with other people who don't have kids. I started it because I was like, I just want a positive space that encourages people without kids, that isn't hateful towards parents. And it kind of just sort of blossomed into what it is now. And I think the best thing we can do is like, and I don't think people think about this a lot, but when you advocate for child-free people, you're also advocating for childless people. Like, people don't think about the fact that, okay, if we make it known to women and men, because I think like 50% of infertility cases are all, like due to males. So like if we make it known that you can have a happy, fulfilling, joyful life without kids, that's going to not only make it great for people who choose to not have kids, but also for people who don't choose that. Like, they're now not going to remortgage their house 15 times so they can pay for fertility treatments, and they're not going to like slip into this sort of hopeless depression because that's not an option. Like, if I knew going into infertility that regardless of whether or not we had kids, my life would be incredible, maybe it wouldn't have been so hard. Like, maybe it would have been, this sucks, I wanted to have kids and I'm not, but I know there's still joy there. So like, I think it would be nice if the childless and child-free community could also sort of come a bit closer together, because we're more or less fighting the same battle.
I think we can learn a lot from the LGBT community, and I kind of like want like I haven't figured it out, because it'll just be like C for all the different child-free, childless, childhood,
Yeah.
like there's not a great term for it to be inclusive. And I have people, ask me, well, does your firm only serve child-free people? Like, no, it serves people who don't have kids and don't plan to have kids. But the interesting thing to me is you have to, if you're on the childless side, I talked a lot with Katie Seppi from Chasing Creation, and she says that the childless people need to grieve the life they thought they were going to live before they can live a new life.
Yep.
And I'm frank with people. I'm like, if you haven't gone through the grief process, you're not ready for child-free financial planning. Like, it's just, you're still just trying or whatever else is. Cool. Stay on life plan. Once you've gotten past it and you've grieved and you worked through it, let's talk about what your new life looks like. And I have these great conversations with people that are like, I didn't know I have options.
Yeah.
You have every option in the world. They're like, huh. And you're right. The two communities, they're flip sides of the same coin. It's just a different path to get there.
It is. And when you're sort of in like the depths of the grief, you don't want to hear about how great life is without kids. It is hard, but I think it is important to have a path between the two. And I like to think that I'm somewhat helpful in that. Like I have parents that follow me, I have childless people that follow me, I have child-free people that follow me, I have, families with child-free or childless relatives that just want to understand. So like I think we need to still be respectful to all of the communities, but it is important to still work together because every win in the child-free space is a win in the childless space as well.
Absolutely. And that's where my take on is, yes, and we need to talk to the general population, not to the Child-Free Convention is this weekend, and the Childless Convention collective that Katie does. They both had sessions on just debating the terms. And I'm like, that's not the argument we need to be having. I do a lot of press, and I did an interview with somebody and on something for finance. I said, oh, by the way, you should talk about child-free finance. It's a good topic. And he says to me, well, I got to check with my editor because I'm not sure we can use that word in print. I'm like, what? He says, it's like the word suicide. We're not allowed to say it because people might do it.
What?
And I'm like, okay.
like it's a cuss word?
I don't know. But because I think we just need to get out there and talk about it and be okay with it. And just say, yep, it's just part of who we are. It just is. It's not that we're, my pitch in the public is child-free life is not better or worse. It's just different. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't. I'm not recruiting people to the cause. I'm just saying if you live a child-free life, it changes your finances. It changes your life plan. That's all. I'm not saying it's better.
Hilarious that people think you're like trying to recruit people or something. Like I've been told more than once by miscellaneous commenters that they feel like I'm just trying to start a cult or something. I'm like, I'm recruiting nobody. Bringing awareness. I'm making this a safe space for other people to connect. And like, if you want to be kind of combative, I think parents do more of a job trying to recruit others than we ever do. I've never gone up to someone and been like, oh, you're planning on having kids. Are you sure? That sounds like a really bad idea. Yet I've been given the parenting elevator pitch by almost every parent I come in contact with. So like, who's really doing the recruiting here?
Yeah, I laugh because you got it right. I worked in healthcare before, and I had a staff member stop me in the hall. The person who works for me says, hey, I've been thinking about you and your wife. You're both really smart. You really need to have kids. And I'm like, just do the inverse of that. Like if I stop you in the hall, I'm like, I've been thinking about you and your spouse. You're really dumb. You shouldn't have kids. Like I couldn't, you can't invert it.
No, not at all. So
I told somebody this story, and they said, well, did you go to HR for this issue? And I said, we were in the HR department.
Oh.
But it's a cultural norm, and it is. I mean, let's be real. Women get it much worse than men, but even us guys, we get it too. It's different. Guy to guy, I don't get it. Women come to men and complain about it.
Oh, yeah. It's weird to me that people get so offended by asking them to just change certain things. Like there's so many times that people have been like, well, they have good intentions when asking that. And I'm like, I acknowledge that the intentions were good, but it still doesn't make it okay. I'm not even asking people to not ask if people have kids or not talk about it. Like I'm asking for a simple change of language. Instead of saying, when are you having kids? Say, do you want to have kids? You still accomplish the same outcome, but you're being significantly less offensive. And people get so mad about that. Like they should have authority over knowing what goes on in my womb or something. Like it's ridiculous that this is just normal everyday conversations.
Well, I was doing a financial article, writing for financial people, say child-free people exist and, kind of who we are and how it changes finances. And back and forth with the editors and other things and just kind of how it's going. And I put in there, whether they're child-free, childless, not by choice, it doesn't really matter. How they got there doesn't change the financial plan in the long run. And the person I was writing this article with was like, well, but I think me knowing why they don't have kids is going to help. And I was like, nope, not so much. We're going back and forth on this. And I said to him, I said, okay, cool. My wife has a 50-50 chance of dying if she gets pregnant. How does that change my financial plan? He's like, oh. I was like, you don't want to know the answer now, do you? Like,
No.
but I think it's just like they can't understand it. So they're like, well, I need to know. No, you don't need to know any of that. Like on my intake forms, I actually have, do you have kids? Yes, no. And if it says no, it says, cool. Are you child-free, childless? I'll never ask you about it again, intentionally to allow people a safe space to share or not. I mean, people have their stories and other things.
Yep.
But it doesn't change a thing in how we work with them as clients or whatever else it is. But people are nosy. They're like,
Yeah. And it's almost like you need to have a justifiable reason. Like, well, I need to know why. Okay, it doesn't change the financial plan, but maybe it changes how you perceive me. If I physically can't have kids, or if I have risk of death or chronic illness or whatever, suddenly it's okay to not have kids. But if you're just a completely fertile person who opted out of it, well, maybe that just changes how I feel about you. It doesn't actually change anything else.
I don't know. I never thought I would be arguing about, how to work. I call it an underrepresented minority group with child-free folks. I didn't think I'd be arguing with it. And I did an article for a DEI journal for finance of talking about DEI. And I was talking about the term child-free with the dash, without. And the editor was fighting with me again. I'm like, listen, I'm literally writing an article about how to work with the population. I use it without a dash because I think the dash implies something's missing. But you're fighting me because the AP style guide says it has to have a dash and has to have this meaning. I'm like, listen to the community who's telling you how to work with them. And finally, they put a footnote at the end saying, we used it this way because and I'm like, okay, fine. Like, the financial world is just so far behind. I'll give you one more example, then we'll wrap up. I was at another conference talking about how to help women with their finances. Cool. And the person up front goes, well, if you're getting divorced, you don't have kids, it's not as bad. And I'm like, you sure you want to stick out that one? Different. It is different. I'll give you that. Not as bad. That's a huge judgment. So I reached out afterwards and she's like, I never really thought about it. I'm like, all these things are just...
I said it on a stage in front of a bunch of people, but I never really thought about it.
I was like, wow, it's just these things that come out, that pronatalist bias, that is just hard. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you'll find the answer on how do we promote the community. And next time I talk to you, you'll have done like the public speaking you don't want to do. And like so what's your future for your Instagram and all your work, and where are you going?
I just started a Substack, so I'm going to do more sort of long form writing. I'm starting online book club come the fall. I'll be posting the sign up for that. And I'm not quite sure the details yet, but I'd love to read some good books that are going to just create good conversation. And then hoping to maybe in the future get into more sort of like interviews or something along those lines, still kind of percolating. So I guess I'd say stay tuned for more information on all of that.
And with the amount of books you read, I figured you'd be writing one by now.
Oh, well, lots of people keep saying that, but I think they maybe misjudge how difficult it is to write a book.
Oh, I just finished the first draft of my second book. And Source Books is a publisher. And once you get into the publishing line and all that, it's 18 months from the time you sign a contract to the time the book exists and all the amount of work that goes in it. And the problem with the book is you either make no money or lots of money, and there's nowhere in between.
No, not at all. I think like John Acuff came out and he said like on one of his books, he literally made $14,000 after like the publishing fees and all of that stuff. And like he's a well-known name within the Christian community. So like coming away with 14 grand, that's really not that much money.
Yeah, I will say when you're looking down the barrel and going, okay, I need 75,000 words dane by August 30th. That's my timeline. That 75,000 words starts hurting.
Yeah.
It looks a lot better than it seems, but I'm with you. So where can they find you? Where's your Substack, Instagram, all that fun stuff? Might as well give it a plug, and we'll include the link in the show notes.
Yeah, so Instagram, Tiffany J. Marie, and everything else is just through the link in my bio. Make it nice and easy for people.
Awesome. And if I'm summing this up, I'm going to call this advocating for the child-free community, because that's really what you're talking about.
Yes.
if you're a great brand who wants to do marketing, now we know the person to go to. We just got to make sure it's something that Tiffany's already using. But thank you very much, and appreciate having you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That's all for this week's episode of Childfree Wealth Podcast. Be sure to follow Childfree Wealth on social media, email us at podcast@childfreewealth.com, or visit our website, www.childfreewealth.com.